Raylene Brandel. Laura Casey.
Here.
Dan Dennehy. Mary McCormick. Cindy Perdue-Dolan. Cindy Shaw. Chad Silk.
Here.
Matt Steppen.
Here.
Ben Thielen. And could I remind anybody in the audience that we have hearing assistance from now on? If anybody needs anything, come up and see me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question about the minutes for July 14th. There's no header on there, and it's just that piece of paper. So I think we need to update that.
That's already been corrected.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Could I have a motion, please, to go ahead, Ms. McCormick?
I would like to make an addendum to the July 28th meeting, in particular the new business, the discussion of the public outreach plan. I think we discussed that for about an hour, and we got about a paragraph of minutes. And so I just think it's very important in these minutes and in the future that at the very minimum, we point out the things that we agreed upon, our decisions that were made. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I have one, the members agreed not to have tables or stations at the open house. Instead, commission members will mingle with the public and make themselves available to answer questions or concerns. Two, questions or topics for discussion as presented in the survey should be general. And three, the survey should include questions about how fire services should be structured.
Ms. McCormick, do you have that formally for Ms. Cohn?
I do not. I edited it, and I think I spoke clearly, and she should be able to capture that in the minutes.
Okay,
I can take that from the transcript.
thank you. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mary, for that. I'm wondering if, I know AI has a process to capture minutes or capture conversation. I don't know, it's not perfect, but if that's something we can add on to the minutes, because I totally agree with Mary. We had a very long discussion, and I know it's hard to capture everything, but yeah, adding this to the minutes of the 28th would be very important, because that was a very interesting conversation and something that should be captured for posterity.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Last month I sent you all some examples of meeting minutes, and so I would like your comment back, comparing what I take from the minutes to those. I would appreciate that so that I can move on whether we want to get that software. The YouTube is generated from AI, and so that's what I do. It's really, really bad. But I do that. There was a lot of very repetitive discussion, so I apologize. I probably just overgeneralized on that portion.
Ms. McCormick.
You know, as someone who recorded minutes for many years, I think, you know, it is difficult. I don't think we need a verbatim account, but when you listen to that, you should, by time you're done, you should, or anything, you should be able to encapsulate what the main discussion points were and whether any agreements formally by a vote or not were made. And you know, for me to take the time to go look at a bunch of minutes and decide which ones I think are best, I think is something I'm really not that interested in doing. I think that a minute taker should be able to go through and listen and encapsulate the main points of discussion. I know that one in particular was very roundabout, but it can be done. You know, you might have to listen to it more than once, but you know, we need to have that done in the future. And I'm afraid if I say I want my minutes this way and then that method really doesn't prove to work, I just don't really want to have to say what method of minutes. I think even having discussion with the council secretary, who I believe takes pretty good minutes, you could ask her how she does it, and that could be a help.
Can I? I'd like to remind the council I was absent for that meeting, and so I was listening in on YouTube. And I would like to ask you all to speak very clearly into the mic. It is really, really difficult to hear. So I had the unique experience of listening as our home listeners probably do, and I had to switch over to my phone in order to hear it. I couldn't hear it on the computer. So that might have been part of the problem as well. And again, I'm sorry, I overgeneralized on there. I didn't see that there were or hear that there were any motions passed. I will go back through and see if I've missed that, both in my notes and on the YouTube. But also from here on out, please, please, please speak about 3 inches away from the mic, and also speak up and enunciate, because it is really difficult for our home listeners to hear and understand. That's one thing I did learn.
Okay, any other further discussion on the minutes? Mr. Steppen.
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
The amendments offered by Mary. Yes.
Madam Chair, if I may, we really don't have minutes of the July 14th meeting. That should just simply state there was no meeting. You didn't, Madam Chair, even adjourn the meeting. So I think we would not call those minutes. We would just say there was no meeting on July 14th.
Correct. It's just a notification for the public that we intended a meeting, we were
Yeah.
not noticed, and it was not held. So it's just part of our public record. It's not something
Yeah,
for
I
vote.
just needed something to put up there, so when people go looking for it, they go, why are these minutes missing? And so I guess I'm asking for approval to put that statement out there saying there was
Madam
no
Chair,
meeting.
I would recommend that it just says July 14th, 2025, no meeting was held.
Is there any further discussion on the note for July 14th? Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that we, as much as I don't want to, I think we should hold these both in abeyance until we see the final product with the amendments for the July 28th meeting and approve them at the next meeting.
Any other discussion, Ms. McCormick?
I'll second that motion, or is that proper order?
I think we can't, we had a motion on the floor, and then we do have another second, or, excuse me for the process.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I'd like to do a substitute motion where we hold these both in abeyance till the next meeting until we see the final product for the 14th and the 28th of July.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so with the motion to hold in abeyance, can I have a vote, please? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we will bring those back to our next meeting for approval. Okay, moving on, we have a presentation by James Olette, our Butte-Silver Bow Safety and Health Coordinator on risk management strategies. And so, Mr. Olette, welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Study Commission, for having me here. My name is James Olette. I'm the Safety and Health Coordinator and ADA Coordinator with the City County of Butte-Silver Bow. And I got a presentation for you, Risk Implications of Charter Inclusion of Volunteer Fire Departments in Consolidated Government. That was my third attempt of making it as short as possible. Do we have a clicker? No, I just have to, cool. Ms. McCord, do you want to run the computer for me? Thanks. So for this presentation, it was sourced from, I used multiple documents, including Montana Safety Culture Act. I also used critical health and safety issues for volunteer fire services and risk management practices in fire services, both FEMA documents, and then NFPA, understanding and implementing the standards. Next slide, Kate. So what is risk? So risk, I really like this definition. It says the possibility of meeting danger or suffering harm or loss to exposure, harm, or loss. A person or thing insured or representing a source of risk to expose to the chance of injury or loss. Now, Study Commission, I do invite you guys at any time, if you do have any questions during this presentation, let me know. There is a time at the end. If I'm going too fast, if I'm going too slow, please just let me know. Thank you. So risk management refers to the process of planning, organizing, directing, and controlling, those two words, very important, directing and controlling the resources and activities of an organization in order to minimize detrimental effects on that organization. That's from NFPA 1250, Recommended Practices in Fire and Emergency Services Organization Risk Management. Next slide. Another definition, emergency response managers should recognize that they are responsible for ensuring that their organizations are always ready and able to perform their missions and to meet the expectations of their communities. The managers of public safety organizations are also custodians of public funds and assets. They must restrict any undesirable outcome that costs money, consume public dollars, and reduces the government's capability to spend those funds where they would. That is taken from the FEMA Risk Management Practices in Fire Services. And final definition for you guys. Emergency responders are recognized for their bravery because they're willing to accept risks the general public finds personally unacceptable. Certainly, the nature of the activities of emergency responders exposes them to a high level of inherent risks that all too often result in line of duty injuries and deaths. So what we're going to do in this next part is we're going to look at some of those risks in fire services. I'm not a fireman, I'm not a first responder, but I do work as the safety and health coordinator. So I want to make sure that all of our programs, all of our departments, public works, police, fire, volunteer, all of our volunteers, our volunteer firemen, that we're all performing to the highest level of safety and meeting all of those standards. With fire, which we're going to look here too, you're going to look a little glimpse into what it's the dangers that our firefighters risk every single day to protect our community. Next slide, Kate. So the risks of firefighting. So these statistics were taken from NFPA. The website is there. It's also in your books. I invite you guys to drill down on them, go on the website, take a closer look into that. If you do want a better link than that one, I can email it guys to you tomorrow, because I know it can be very small. Next slide. So firefighter injuries by year. So this is from 1981 to 2023. There are about 6,175. Now we can see.
I hate to interrupt, James, but could you define the acronyms when you get to an acronym so we know what they are, like NFPA?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so this one is from, this figure one, 1981 to 2023. We can start to see that obviously in the 80s it was really high, and as standards became more scrutinized, as fire even prevention became more became a bigger risk to mitigate fire injuries, to prevent fires. You want to mitigate the fire from even starting. So as building codes, as we got all that more stringent, we started to see a decrease. And that obviously came along with training and firefighting standards as well. Next slide, Kate. Thank you. Injuries by type of duty. So injuries occurred while firefighters were performing a variety of duties, including responding to and returning from incidents, including fire and non-fire emergencies, working at a non-fire emergency, including rescue calls, hazard calls, and natural disaster calls, training, performing other on-duty activities, and working at the fire ground. We're going to be looking at that term fire ground here a little more. So we're going to keep drilling into these to look at the injuries by the type of duty that they were performing. Next slide, Kate. Thanks. Nature of fire ground injuries. So the nature, the type or kind of physical harm or damage to the body that the firefighter experiences. So injuries on the fire ground are a particular concern as the major location of firefighter injuries. The major type of injuries that occur during the firefighter operations, including strains, sprains, or muscular pain, which accounted for around 40%. Fire or chemical burns accounted for 15%, and then other injuries, including wounds, cuts, bleeding, is around 12%. At 8%, we have smoke or gas, 5% thermal stress, 4% dislocation or fractures, and then injuries due to respiratory distress, burns and smoke inhalation, and heart attacks or strokes accounted for 2% of the fire ground injury totals. So we're just looking here at the actual operatable scene of a fire. Fire ground injuries by causes, overexertion or strain, as we can see, that's at 31%. Another 22% were caused by falls, jumps, slips, or trips. Other leading causes of injury, including exposure to fire products, 13%, contact with an object, about 10%, being struck by an object, we got 6%, and extreme weather and exposures to chemicals or radiation each counted for 2% of the injuries of the fire ground. So non-fire ground injuries, so these are injuries that are happening not necessarily at the exact fire. We again have strain, sprain, and muscular pain. So when we start seeing that, that's coming up and presenting a pattern of whether you're at the fire ground or not, something that we really want to take account for to protect our firefighters. Wound bleeding, again, bruising, dislocation, fracture, thermal stress, smoke gas, burns, other respiratory burns. And we can see where those are happening. Do they happen at a non-fire emergency, responding to, returning from a call, training, other on duty? So basically when that firefighter steps into work, they have infinite ways of getting hurt, whether that's just from training, from being at the fire station, performing all those duties. So we want to make sure that we have that strong safety and health program for them. Next slide. Fire department vehicle collisions. So in 2023, an estimated of 19,225 collisions involved fire department emergency vehicles responding to or returning from the incident. These incidents resulted over 1,450 firefighter injuries. Another 550 collisions occurred. 2 firefighters, personal vehicles, which resulted in about 75 injuries if a firefighter was responding to that call in their personal vehicles. Thanks, Okay. Exposure to infectious disease, right? So not just fire, we're also thinking of bloodborne pathogens, infectious diseases. We have about 15,025 firefighters were exposed to infectious diseases in 2023. A little breakdown of fatal firefighter injuries in 2024. So these obviously resulting in death. There has been a slight decrease over the years. Still, one death is far too many deaths for any of us to take on. So 45 of those were on duty were municipal, or 45 of the on duty, 26 of the 45 were career, 19 were volunteer, non-municipal, and then 51. You have that within 24 hours. So that's after the event. The event has ended, they went home, and then they had a heart attack, right? So that is after the actual event at the ground. Age and gender, all but one of the fatal injured firefighters in 2024 were male. So firefighters aged 40 to 49 experienced the highest number of fatal injuries, actually accounting for 1/3 of the total. 13 of the firefighter fatalities were aged 50 to 59. 11 of the firefighter fatalities were 70 years age or older, and 19 firefighters in the 70 years or older grade were volunteers, and 1 was a non-municipal contract firefighter. Okay, so the fatal firefighter injuries by type, fireground activities, admin work, training. Next slide. Again, sudden cardiac death. Having a heart attack leading to sudden cardiac arrest. We're looking around 20 actually happening at the incident, and then 10 happening afterwards. Thanks. Long-term effects of working as a firefighter. So we definitely appreciate, I know everyone here appreciates all of our first responders. According to the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance, 110 firefighters, 17 EMTs, and 4 dispatchers died by suicide in 2024. So that is just something that we can take to heart as we are discussing these very important matters here, as we're redefining the structure within Butte-Silver Bow. It's a hard job. It's hard on our firefighters, on their families, on their mental health, their physical health. They're really putting a lot on the line for us. So here in Butte-Silver Bow, what we could do, what we owe them, is making sure that both our paid and our volunteers are as safe as possible. 17 firefighters succumbed to cancer in 2024. So this one is just kind of a recap of what we went through. These are all the lists: physical hazards, environmental hazards, thermal hazards, biological hazards, electrical hazards, chemical hazards, radiation hazards, position hazards. These are hazards that I don't see every day in my job, that most people don't see every day in our job, but our firemen, they willingly sign up and take these on. So that is why I came here tonight to discuss what are some of the risks and where we find ourselves right now with the current climate. So case analysis show that this is from Everyone Goes Home, the Firefighter Safety Initiative, the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation. Case analysis show that most of these line of duty deaths and injuries are preventable. These deaths are preventable. These injuries are preventable. Next slide. Right. Firefighting occupational safety hazard mitigation. So let's talk about what I do, what Chief Osborne does, what Butte-Silver Bow does, me mostly with all of our departments, Mr. Osborne, Chief Osborne with the fire department, and how to mitigate these hazards so that our volunteers, both career and volunteer, go home as safe as possible. Next slide. So the Swiss cheese model, I love this. Has everyone seen this before? Maybe first time. You guys seen this before? I love it so much. In the Swiss cheese, I'm a pepper jack guy, but it's still cool. In the Swiss cheese model, an organization's defenses against failure are modeled as a series of barriers represented as a slice of the cheese. So when someone gets hurt at work, right? I think the most common thing that we want to do is go to that employee and say, what were you doing wrong? What were you doing? You got hurt. You shouldn't have done that. I don't follow that model. I don't believe that injuries are that simple. I believe that they are created in a system that can be managed and can be preventative. That's what safety culture is. And I have our workers' comp here from Montana State Fund, and that's what they do. They help me make sure that we have a great safety culture. So, for example, if we look at the holes in the cheese represent individual weaknesses in individual parts of the system and are continually varying in the size and position in all the slices. So depending on the hole, it does vary. That it can also be the hazard. The system as a whole produces failure when the holes in all of the slices monumentally align, permitting a trajectory of accident opportunity, so that a hazard passes through the holes in all of the defenses leading to the accident. So we want to make sure that as we are going along, and this is part of our job, right, as risk managers and safety and health coordinators, making sure that these never align, that we have strong controls in place. So the hierarchy of controls. This, I think everyone always says when you're in safety, I have gloves on, I have mask, I'm fine, right? We hear that all the time. Oh, don't worry, I got gloves and masks on. No, PPE is the least effective thing that we can be doing for our employees. It is incredibly effective. Everyone wear your PPE properly, but it's the least effective in controlling that hazard, right? So you want to try to eliminate or substitute that. If we can't eliminate or substitute, we want to design engineering controls. Then administrative controls. This is where most of my work comes into. The administrative structure on which our safety culture functions. We can look at this. So and these should be worked together. You should be using engineering controls, administrative controls, and PPE. But for this example of the hierarchy controls, we can see that administrative controls, which is what every single one of you guys are doing tonight, you vote for a system of an administrative control, which I will explain here later. Policy, procedures, that's all administrative controls on how much risk we are going to be taking on as a county. PPE, obviously wear your PPE, it's very important, but that is the final step. And I will kind of talk about this later on when we get into respiratory protection. Next slide. And that's kind of an example, just to kind of drive home the point. Administrative controls make the task safe for the worker. So training requirements, safeguard work practices, regulations and standards, those are all our admin controls. Engineering controls, the way that the apparatus is designed, ventilation, lockout, takeout of electrical hazards. Personal protection, there we have our helmets, gloves, PPE, right? So that's some examples of it. So it goes, make the task safe for the worker, make the task safe for the worker with engineering controls, and finally with the PPE, you're coming into contact with that hazard and we're providing you with that protective equipment. So make the worker safe from the hazard. Administrative controls. So clear chain of command, incredibly important at the top, right? That goes for me, knowing what I have to do when I go on a job site, when I inspect a job site, where I'm going to go, where I'm supposed to go. If it's an open trenching, I'm not going to go down in the trench. I'm not qualified or trained for that particular activity, so I want to know who's in charge of that scene, right? That's why OSHA has competent and qualified people to shut down an unsafe trenching scene and to make those decisions. Chain of command. Then policies and procedures, right? Fire, for example, this is the policies and procedures that Mr. Osborne has. It's a wonderful document and outlines all their safety and health procedures. High quality training. I can't say that enough. Annual fit testing, again, going back to that respiratory standard that we're going to talk about here shortly. Near miss reporting. This is real important. When someone tells me, there hasn't been an incident in 20 years, I think, okay, well, how many near misses? Where aren't we counting near misses, right? We want to make sure that those, or even $0 claims, hey, I get hurt, but I didn't go to the hospital, it wasn't that big of an incident. No, we want to know all that information. That's incredibly important. job hazard analysis for all fire and rescue activities with PPE selection. So let me talk about respiratory protection, because I know that the issue of SCBAs have come up a lot, right? So SCBA, you get your SCBA and you're fine, you're good? No. The SCBA is all the way down. So you got to have a job safety analysis or a hazard analysis. So you look at the employee, you look at their job description, you then do a job safety or job hazard analysis after that, after one of those duties to see what kind of hazards come along with that. So now you have your job safety analysis, and then you start doing your hierarchy of control. So you start developing policies, procedures, what kind of training, what type of qualifications are going to be needed, and then you start going under PPE selection. So if we're at the health department and we have an outbreak of an infectious disease, TB, measles, we have an outbreak, we're going to put them in N95s. Is an N95 a respirator? Yeah, it is. N95 is a respirator, just like an SCBA. So you're going to have to decide which piece of equipment is going to be best at preventing that exposure to the hazard. So then you select that respirator, so an SCBA. Okay, so then what's your next step? Your medical evaluation. Can I wear this respirator without having adverse effects to my body? Putting on this respirator, even if you remember N95s or even your COVID mask, sometimes that caused people to have respiratory distress, just wearing a mask. Can you imagine wearing a full SCBA? So OSHA has qualified questions that everyone has to go to before we even get to that respirator to make sure that you can wear that, that your body is not going to have any adverse effects or physiological effects by you wearing that piece of equipment. If there is, there would have to be a reassignment of duties. Okay, so then we move down the line. Then we have fit testing, right? Qualitative and quantitative fit testing. We do qualitative fit testing at the health department. The fire department do quantitative fit testing. So we want to make sure that that mask, that respirator, that SCBA is fit to your body so that you're not wearing something that's not fitted, because if it's not fitted right, then it's not going to work. Okay, now you have all that. Now do I get my piece of equipment? No. Now you get to train on the equipment, right? You have those administrative controls. I want to make sure that my body is not having any adverse effects in a controlled environment with that on my body, right? So we're going to do a lot of training with it, because the first time you put on your PPE should not be inside the burning house. You should be practicing with that PPE, training with it, knowing how to work it throughout, and that's what our career firemen do. That's why they have a respiratory protection program. Finally, they do get to have that PPE assigned for them, and there are some questions that come along with it, right? So what tasks am I required to perform where I need this PPE? They should be aware of it. What dangers? What are the limitations of the PPE? How do I don it? How do I doff it? How do I maintain it? How do I make sure that it's effective? So PPE is an entire science. So when someone says, oh, we got PPE on, we're safe, we're fine, that is the farthest from the truth. This is all in a majority of those tasks. How many of those tasks that I told you were administrative controls? Right? The majority of them. That's why administrative controls are so important in all workplace safety and health. Next slide, Kate. Many departments face serious challenges when trying to implement standards. Though often daunting, it is important to remember that the standards are an essential component to contributing to firefighter safety. Next slide. So do the right thing, do them the right way, and ensure that they are done the right way. Again, making sure that they're ensured that they're done the right way. All right, here's our beautiful state capitol. So let's talk about safety programs. This is what a safety program is, something that I work on with all of our departments. It's the majority of my job. It's that, it's not just something that's beneficial to all of us. It's also required. And so we're going to talk about some of the requirements here. So Montana Safety Culture Act, 1993 state legislature, they passed the Montana Safety Culture Act. We are not an OSHA state, so OSHA does not oversee us. We are overseen by the Montana Department of Labor and Industry, and that's how I got involved in all of this volunteer fire career stuff. I was at my desk in January, just after Christmas break, excited for a nice, slow January, and the Department of Labor said, hey, James, we're coming in to inspect all of your volunteer fire stations. Now, before this, I was the risk manager in Gallatin County. I was the safety, risk and safety manager for Gallatin County. I would have never went into a rural fire department. We left them completely alone. They were completely separated. It was not my oversight. We did not have any authority to act. So I was really kind of confused by this because I was under the impression that these were rural fire departments. As I started to explore this and looking at the employee-employer relationship, I realized that Butte, either intentionally or not, took on a lot more of the responsibilities that created an employee-employer relationship where we are directing, controlling, funding, which then triggered me and my safety and health training and my risk management. All the alarm bells went off because I said, okay, now we have all of these things to make sure that we are in compliance with. So again, compliance. So, and if you guys have any questions about general 100 feet questions about safety and health, we do have Sarah Rope, our underwriter here, Tawny, our safety consultant, and Rhodey Holman from Marshall McClellan. They can offer some general safety, though it's up to us to kind of talk about these things specifically. And they help with our safety programs, and we're really grateful for them. So safety and health, we also have a policy 131. This makes sure, this kind of outlines all the things I'm supposed to do, all the things Chief Osborne's supposed to do, all the things our employees are supposed to do. This is available on our website if you want to read it in full. It's a very interesting policy. Next. So MCA, right, 5071-116, duties of public sector employee and public sector employers and employees. So each public sector shall, not may, but shall, furnish a place of employment that is free from recognized hazards that cause or are likely to cause death or serious physical harm to public sector employees. All right, so OSHA kind of has a general duty clause. We kind of use this as our general duty clause. So even if there's not an OSHA standard or there's an NFPA standard, National Fire Protection Association, even if there's not a direct standard or consensus standards, we still have to make sure that they're safe. We can't say, oh, there's no specific law or policy, so we're off the hook. Adopt and use practices, means, methods, operations, and processes that are adequate to render the workplace safe. Take appropriate actions necessary to protect the life, health, and safety of our public sector employees. So this is good, right? We want to make sure that all our employees across are protected. So we shall comply with all the safety and health standards, rules, and orders issued pursuant to this part as they apply to the public sector employees' own action and conduct. So Montana Department of Labor, so we are not an OSHA state, right? But do we still follow OSHA rules? Yes. So we follow OSHA 1910, which was the respiratory standard I just talked about, 1910.134. We follow 1903, which is our record keeping, and then 1926, which is our construction. So they have adopted that as the standards that we all must follow. So when they come on an inspection, and if they see something that we got a violation, they'll cite an OSHA standard along with it. City, county authorized. Now, I'm not going to preach to the choir. You guys know this, and Chief Osborne gave an extensive presentation on this. But we are a county in a city, or a county or a city or town within the county may unite to form a single unit of local government under the provisions of this part. Effect of consolidation. As a political subdivision of the state, such consolidated unit or local government shall have the status of a county and an incorporated municipality for all the purposes, and shall replace and be the successor of the county and the city of or town. So consolidation is a very extreme process of actually molding that city and that county. And sometimes we're so used to it that we don't take a step back and think, wow, this is really extreme what we're doing. We're consolidating both that city and county. Next. Charter provisions establishing executive, legislative, and administrative structure and organization are superior to statutory provisions. You have charter supremacy. Next question. Or next slide, thanks, Kate. A charter form of government must have the officers, departments, boards, commissions, and agencies that are established in the charter by local ordinance or required by state law. So we have to have departments in it, whether they are in our ordinance, in our charter, and the ones that are required by state law. So Montana, a little bit of class cities. Municipalities are required over 10,000 to have, if you go, this is just we're going to talk here in a minute about classes. So first class over 10,000, second class 10,000 and more than 5,000. Every city having a population of less than 5,000 and more than 1,000 is a third class, and every municipal corporation having a population of less than 1,000 and more than 300 is a town. A first-class city or town shall provide fire protection services as provided in this part, right? In Butte, when it consolidated, did it have more than 10,000 people in the city of Butte? Yes. Volunteer fire districts. So this is where it kind of comes down to a little bit of where we find all of our confusion on oversight and on responsibilities. This is the whole House Bill 547. Something that came about around February, I think, the end of February, I found out about it. While I was kind of on my own adventure here looking at the safety stuff, I was not involved in the design or the writing of House Bill 547, but I thought it would really clear up a lot of our problems. This one here, you know, volunteer fire districts or companies are not affected by city-county consolidation unless specifically provided by the charter, right? So this is why Anaconda is kind of left alone. I have a map here at the end, and I want to show you. This is why Anaconda said we're not going to consolidate our fire departments, right? So they were left alone in that, so they're not affected by the consolidation. Butte, however, in the next slide, decided to include them in our charter. So now there shall be a singular one fire department, which shall be composed of the paid fire department and volunteer fire department in the city county. Now, whether the intent was there or not, that puts a lot of burden on the executive branch and the legislative branch right now. Not saying it's bad, right? But now we are saying that there is a department. Can you go to the next slide, Kate? We can see this in ordinances. An ordinance to provide for the creation of a department to be known as the Butte-Silver Fire Department. They are not a separate entity, at least by our ordinance and by our charter. They are a single taxing unit, which we'll see in the next slide, right? They're a single taxing unit. Now Butte has to now have oversights. They have to have checks. They have balances when it comes to budgetary, when it comes to budgetary audits, when it comes to safety and health. And this is demonstrated here. We do monthly life insurance. We do background checks for our volunteers. They operate as a department within Butte-Silver Bow. Again, there shall be a fire department. And all of this debate, and I cannot get that out of my head. There shall be a fire department. The ordinance says there shall be created a fire department. So I would love to hear your questions because if you have any questions about that, because when it comes to safety and health and oversight, I have to make sure that all of our departments are safe and healthy. And in the event that we do get sued and that charter's opened up, how are we going to explain in court, well, they're their own separate. We just pay for them and pay all their PPE, and they're listed in our ordinance and our department and in our budgetary books as a department. But they're not a department, I swear, right? So, like, this is where I cannot keep coming back to there shall be a fire department. Next slide. Okay, again, this was a funding request that we have, so there is funding. I think I saw Miss who was the other commissioner? Miss Casey, Miss Shaw? Miss Shaw was on. I got this one specifically for Miss Shaw. But yeah, she was at this meeting. But yeah, so again, we're putting in communications, we're getting money. In the loan application of this, if there is a default, Butte-Silver Bow has to pay for that. So there is documents that are showing that there is this employee and employer relationship. That is a real term, by the way. If you guys want to look up something, look up employee-employer relationship or the common law test, which talks about the difference between common law, an employee-employer relationship, and a contractor, and what those relationships look like. Next slide, Kate. Thanks. Okay, so we have a department, right? One fire department with 2 divisions, a volunteer and a paid. What do we have next? Well, the Director of Fire Services shall possess full power and authority over the organization, government, and discipline of the paid and volunteer fire departments, and may from time to time establish such rules and regulations subject to the approval of the Chief Executive. Again, this is an ordinance. Now, you can disagree. This might not be something you feel that is right or shouldn't be there, but this is in the law. We have to follow this, right? It might be contrary to your beliefs or how you feel the system can be run, but this is still an ordinance. And, you know, watching Chief Osborne, I really feel for him. Because if I got a job and there was a law passed that gave me authority and control over the safety and health of a department, but yet I was told that I couldn't enact safety standards, I could not be controlled, that they are completely autonomous, how could I oversee that department? There's an ordinance and a charter that's both putting them as a department with oversight, right? So we might not like this, but this is what our ordinance says, and I have to follow all the ordinances, right? So do all of our citizens. We want them to be following how the system runs. So this is clear direct and control. If something happened to the volunteer firemen, it could come back on our chief and saying, hey, I don't care about all this debate. You have an ordinance that was passed by our Council of Commissioners that granted him all of the authority to act, to remove someone who's not being safe, to enact safety standards. That control is there. It's in the ordinance. Next slide, Kate. Thank you. Now, property, apparatuses. The Director of Fire Services shall have charge of all the fire apparatuses and real property of the Butte-Silver Bow Fire Department. Great. So we're going to go over a little bit of risk and the impact that risk has. But I hope I was able to demonstrate in this presentation, you know, sometimes Butte-Silver Bow's executive branch kind of gets kicked around a little bit. You know, it's so easy to say, oh, chief executive, or our chief is not doing this, or it's JP's or it's Zach's problem. No, guys, there's a system here that's not working. There is a system to telling us to act, saying you're responsible. You are responsible for their safety oversight. Now, this body is great, because if you don't think that Butte-Silver Bow should take this on, right, then you guys get to make those recommendations. But we're going to need some clarity in this, because this almost 100 years of fighting, it's not going to be working out, and it's unsustainable. And who pays for it? Our paid and our volunteer firemen at the end of the day, right? So I hope you can give some compassion to our chief executive and to our director of fire services, because they are told to act by a charter voted on by the people of Butte-Silver Bow. Study commission members who were commissioners in this room, that ordinance was passed in 1996, right? Why hasn't it been cleared up? If Zach really doesn't have the power to control our fire department, our volunteers, then why hasn't that been cleared up? And it's not Zach's problem. We cannot keep blaming Butte-Silver Bow employees for acting within the system that was created for them. And that is something I'm incredibly impassioned about with our entire workforce. We have to create systems for our employees to succeed in them. And right now, we are not creating a structure for our chief to be successful. Next slide, this one. If our city cannot if our city-county charter does not explicitly address how volunteer fire departments are organized, managed, or held accountable, some departments may claim they are exempt from city-county oversight. We heard this. What was the word that we kept hearing over House Bill 547? Autonomy, autonomy, autonomy. Do you know how terrifying the word autonomy is for a risk manager, for someone in safety and health? No one should have any autonomy in Butte-Silver Bow, right? Leads to inconsistent standards, fragmented authority, creates a liability and safety gap, and cause for disputes over control. Because that's what it is right now. It's a huge liability and safety gap. Next slide. Volunteer fire departments operate under the city-county badge without any direction from Butte-Silver Bow, or without any clear direction from Butte-Silver Bow, right? There's one badge. That's an ordinance too. They shall operate under one badge. The city-county is forced to assume liability and workers' comp coverage for departments over which it has no direct control or enforcement authority, right? They're a department. We have to have workers' comp for them because that protects us as well. That protects the volunteers, or that protects our employees, but that also protects us as a no-fault state from getting sued. Next. Volunteers use city, county facilities, trucks, and insurance while making independent decisions on safety policies. Creates a legal and ethical liability gap. You guys heard me all about those administrative controls. They have to come right from the top. Chief Osborne, if he has departments, he has to make those administrative controls throughout anyone that he oversees. Next. The city-county provides PPE, but cannot direct how that PPE is used or maintained. So I come from a different, maybe a little different world of, this is your PPE, you're gonna wear it, we're gonna tell you how it's gonna happen. You go to a construction site down here, there's no negotiating with PPE. There's no negotiating with fit tests. Okay, there's far too many deaths. If an organization's providing that PPE, they are now responsible for how that PPE is maintained and that it meets its compliance standards. The city must stretch a limited budget. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about budget, but I really think that this commission should talk to our budget team, should talk about taxing districts. I think that would be incredibly helpful because there is a limited budget, right? And we have 12 fire stations, 2 full career and 9 volunteers, over 170 firemen, right? So a big question we have to ask, and this is not my place, but this is to hopefully lean into a place of curiosity. Can we afford all of this? Can we afford 200 firemen if we get there? That's going to cost. Now, it is our responsibility as Butte-Silver Bow to make sure we have that money, because if someone signs up as a volunteer fireman, Butte has to spend $15,000, $20,000 to make sure that that fireman has the right turn-up gear, that they have the right PPE. That is our responsibility. So we have to look at this from a financial place as well. Again, that is not my place to talk about. However, it does affect safety, right? Was it chicken or egg? What comes first? And are we allowed to tax that much? Can we increase taxes so that everyone has brand new turn-up gear? 44 apparatuses? Like that's a lot. And we have to make sure that those are 100% compliant. PPE has to be perfect. I will not tolerate PPE coming up short for our volunteers or our career. We cannot as an organization tolerate that. We need to be spending those finances, but with a limited budget and limited taxing, and with a whole bunch of duties that our paid guys have to do, how do we have that? How can we stretch that budget? What is it, $6 million, and something like 60% of it is wages and compensation? And then, look at that information. I'm just roughly kind of just piquing your interest in that, because that is where the real decisions are going to lie. Can we afford to do it in a safe and healthy way, right? So this is an example of Bull Lake Rural Fire District. It costs them about $83,000 a year to operate their volunteer station. So that's just an example on how much it costs. And you can look at that fire station. It looks great, but it looks like a rural fire station, right? Still $83,000, and these these expenses like insurance, Butte-Silver Bow pays those. Fuel, Butte-Silver Bow pays them. And I know the fire department does do fundraisers, the volunteers, and I'm not sure how that money works and how much money they're getting, but I think that's an important conversation for you guys to have, is seeing how much revenue that they're able to generate as a volunteer organization and what costs that they can offset. Those are all interesting questions because, again, it comes down to us at the end of the day. We're holding the match, right? Volunteer departments operate under their own board of trustees and are not bound by city, county safety policy or oversight. We've had this conversation multiple times. The city county is forced to assume responsibility for people, facilities without an authority to enforce NFPA standards or risk management controls. So I've been about safety and health for 10 years. I've never heard of that before. And a policy holder not being able to mitigate that policy, that's a very foreign concept, and it sometimes does keep me up at night. Next slide. So here we are. I'm not from Butte, right? So I went back and I looked. I really was interesting. 1924 was the first article I saw about consolidation, about fire services. So over 100 years now we've been having this. And this is the thing that always happens. And again, I have so much respect for Chief Osborne because it's tough. It's tough. You know, if you look through the newspaper, it's all there. It hasn't worked. There's always this thing, we just got to come to the table. We got to come to the table. We've been hearing that since 1978. If you guys want a copy of these articles, I would love to give you these articles. When you read this, all the problems have been there. It's not Chief Osborne's. It's definitely not his leadership. I get to work with Chief Osborne in the LEPC in emergency management. He is the first phone call to so many people follow his advice, follow his direction. I really feel that we have created such an unfair system to be able to operate in, because it's too simple. It's too simple to say it's my fault or it's JP's fault or it's this commissioner's fault or this. No, and I don't like that for our employees. That's not the type of workplace that I want. I want a safe and healthy workplace for all of our employees. I want our supervisors to be able to succeed. We have to create those structures for them to succeed in. Next slide, Kate. So if you actually want to go one more, I just want to show, for example, so this is an example of Anaconda Deer Lodge that did not consolidate. So we see Anaconda Fire Department, and they're surrounded by rural fire departments, right? I know we bring up Anaconda and talk about them because they're the only consolidated government. I know Ms. Dolan has talked about Anaconda and wanted to see them as an example. So, you know, this is just kind of an example. Now let's look at Butte's map. So that's how, this is from the DNRC. This is our districts. So we have Rise River, which is its taxing unit, Melrose taxing unit, and then we have a Uniform Fire Protection Service District. So in there, we do see that there is a unified system. There's one department. There shall be a fire department. So I hope I was able to kind of give you a little bit of insight. I'm happy to answer any questions. I do appreciate this unique situation. It does take a lot of courage from all of you guys to open this up. It's incredibly important. So if you have any questions, I'm here. We also, and we're going to be respectful with our state fund. We're never going to put them in a position. Their job's not to write our Butte-Silver Bow policies. They're to help us. They're great help. So if we have any general questions about workers' comp, I know maybe some wage loss or what a benefit looks like, let's keep it at a zoomed out for them. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Mr. Ouellette, thank you for your time tonight and your passion as well. It's obviously coming through that this is who you are and that you are here to protect the workers of Butte-Silver Bow. And so I guess my question leading into this is, you said that you were going through, because we had an insurance audit, so you had to go through the volunteer fire departments, or you were, in your presentation, said you were going to the volunteer fire departments to look at safety.
Yeah, so what happened was in January, the Department of Labor, so there's two divisions of the Montana Department of Labor, Safety, and Health, right? So they have their compliance division and they have a consultation program. So we like to use their consultation program where we can invite them in. I believe in having really open doors, so I invite them into a building every month. We walk through. Compliance, on the other hand, works differently. They just show up. They let us know a couple days ahead of time. So I was sitting down with our compliance, and they said, hey, here are the buildings we're going to come inspect, and the 9 volunteer districts were on that. And that's when I took a step back, and I said, I don't know. I don't think that's what's... I'm going to have to look into that because I don't know which kind of oversight we had. That was my first introduction to volunteer fire departments.
All right, I was just wanting to clarify that. I didn't quite understand what was up there. And then, so did you meet with the career chiefs, the volunteer chiefs, and kind of meet with those houses at all regarding some risk management and the issues that you see from your, quasi outside in look at this?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Commissioner, Study Commission Member Raylan, Chair Raylan. We got there. They're temped. Yeah. Was the question, have I met with the volunteers? No. We don't know what our oversight is because they do have a lawyer. So I was advised by our lawyer that we were advised by counsel to make communications done through our county attorneys because they did pick up counsel. Yes, when I first got here, I did send emails to do an inspection. Maybe my first couple weeks on the job. I sent emails out to do some inspections. Some of them do schedule them, but I have not been able to sit down and meet with them. But for example, search and rescue, I was able to call Mr. Conway, Doug Conway. We were able to go down to search and rescue, and I did a whole presentation on safety, risk, how programs look. So that's the first to your question. No, but I would absolutely love to sit down and talk to them and see what kind of training programs they have, because I know some of them have training programs. Some of them have more extensive programs than another. Still, at the end of the day, if they're a department within Butte-Silver Bow, that safety oversight is going to have to come right from Zach, from Chief Osborne. So that's where I get a little bit confused, because Mr. Osborne needs to have all of that authority on how to direct and control systems of safety and oversight, and that's what's kind of lacking right now. But a uniform safety health plan is for sure needed.
Okay, and go ahead, Mr. Dennehy, I'll take you first.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chairman. James, thanks for coming today. So in our previous discussions, we've had people talk about fire coordinator. In the past, we had fire coordinators, and I think that was kind of a go-between the fire and volunteer fire departments as a trying to solve problems through that office. And now in the charter, specific says director of the fire department, director of fire services, actually. What's your opinion on that directorship in a charter compared to the old way of fire coordinator? Do you have an opinion on that versus regarding just safety and your responsibilities as local government?
Thank you, Mr. Dennehy. That's a great question. I really don't know the fire coordinator position, right? I wasn't here, but it's gone for a reason. The people voted it out. So I'm not sure when that happened. Maybe 96. Did that? No, maybe it didn't happen. It was never in the charter?
It was a position that was within Butte-Silver Bow, and then we had a separate fire chief. There wasn't a vote to eliminate one or the other. There was an agreement to bring those two positions together in order to save money, as I understand it. And I can leave that over to other historians on the panel here, but I believe that was the decision.
Okay, so when did the director of fire services come about then? So the director of fire services obviously came in to replace that wasn't working. So whether that was replaced by specific language in an ordinance or in a charter, that was replacing, because that was going to be a system that would work more efficient than obviously that coordinator. So is the director of fire? I think absolutely it could be successful. I mean, I work with Mr. Neary He has the largest workforce. We're doing everything from water treatment to parks and rec to wastewater. Mr. Neary has a very hard job, but we have created a system of clear lines of commands, of chain of controls, and that it works. So yeah, I think the Director of Fire Service is a really smart position, and I think it's incredibly achievable if we create that structure for him to be successful in. So thank you, Mr. Dennehy.
Ms. McCormick, you have your light on.
Sorry.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I've got a bunch of questions, but I'll start with this one. And thank you for telling us that you have not, and the reasons why you have not spoken to any of the volunteers, because, and I applaud your passion. I wish everyone had as much passion for their job as you do, because it's so important. But that said, your presentation tonight was obviously all about the paid and working with Chief Osborne for the most part.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering if you could tell us your opinion. I mean, you went through a lot of policies and procedures and training and testing and equipment, but that's not our role. Our role with the study commission is to talk about the charter. And I'm just wondering, with everything you've said so far tonight, what can we dilute that all down to, what changes need to be made? I think, unfortunately, I feel your presentation might have been a bit too soon, because I really want to hear from Anaconda Deer Lodge County and get their perspective on separating the fire department from the charter. And I appreciate your map of Anaconda, but because we don't have information, I just want to find out from you, what do you think needs to be changed within the charter with regard to our job and what we're doing tonight or for the next 2 years?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Dolan. Yeah, so I think that it's interesting. Obviously, my takeaway is I want Butte-Silver to have the best fire protection services that it can, right? Looking at Anaconda with only a population of over 9,000, it's going to be a different system. So yes, I think looking at Anaconda within being a consolidated government with a charter is interesting, but we also have a lot more population, a large historic district to look after. So I guess my goal is that, do we want them to be a department within Butte-Silver that when you add the word department, there shall be a department. If that wasn't there, I wouldn't be here. I'm not interested in monopolizing how our volunteer fire departments in any of our states work. I didn't do that when I was in Gallatin County, and we had a lot of rural fire departments. It's because our charter says there shall be a department. There shall be a fire department, a singular department. So if we don't want to have a department where they get the benefits that comes with every other department, right? Budget, PPE, all that type of oversight, you're either a department or you're not a department. So I would love for this body to make that decision. Do we want them to be a fire department? And if they're a fire department, then we're going to have someone who oversees them as a department, which our charter already says and our ordinance already says. And if we don't want them a fire department, then take them out of that, and then you'll have to kind of talk about what those next steps are. But as soon as you put a fire department, that puts a burden, or not a burden, but that puts a responsibility on me and the executive branch, and that's kind of why I'm here, because I wanted to, language matters. We can't willfully just say, oh, we want this to be a department, and then they go do whatever they want, and we're gonna, because Butte-Silver is gonna keep having this battle if we don't get a hold of this, because that's it. Our executive branches have to enforce structure and standards within all of our departments. The charter calls it a department. The ordinance shows a creation of a department. There are rules now that we have to follow. So no matter what happens, the chief executive, the director of fire service, whoever you put in those roles, they're going to have pressure to follow those rules because they're a department.
Just a quick clarification for our listeners and for everyone in the audience. We can make recommendations to our voters who will then decide how they would like to see this to be structured, you know, and you're right in terms of laying out what that structure looks like with the best information of pros and cons and maybe perhaps unintended consequences is important. And we appreciate that perspective with the, from the public safety side of things. But we don't truly get to decide. We get to decide what we bring forward to ballot. I know I have questions everywhere. Who is, you have one more follow-up? Okay, and then I'll take Ms. Casey, and then I'll come over here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that, James. So my issue with what you've presented tonight is we got a outline from, sorry, I have to be close to my microphone here. We got an analysis about the legalities with MCA code and ordinances from Butte-Silver Bow from the attorney with, and I feel badly that our county attorney's not here tonight because his input would be obviously important because you said you refer to him. But the volunteers attorney gave us a handout and information during the volunteers presentation with us a couple months ago, or a month ago at least. And so some of the legality things are different that she has outlined from what Butte-Silver Bow is contesting with MCA and the charter and ordinances, et cetera. So I just want to put on the record that I'm going to reach out to the attorney, Kate, with the volunteers to have her watch your presentation and do a rebuttal because I think it's important to get a balanced, because I'm not an attorney either, and I'd really like County Attorney Enruth's perspective on this, as well as Kate, the, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her last name, but the volunteers attorney as well, just to get us in a good spot, because we have to present this, like Chairman Brandel said, to the public to make an ultimate decision on the charter changes. But again, I appreciate your efforts tonight and the information you've given us. Sure. But I want to make sure that we all have all the legalities, you know, T's crossed and I's dotted, so thank you.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Dolan. No, absolutely. I'm all for safety and health and risk management, trying to lean you into a place of curiosity for you to do that research and for us to be so informed. When you guys make those recommendations, I want you guys to be experts on this from all sides, right? If there's, and I'm not a lawyer, very clearly, but I am safety and health. So I do have to reference standards, compliance standards, MCA. Is there something specific that she talked about regarding safety and health that you can, Ms. Dolan, that I can look, that I can help maybe clarify, or maybe a point that was confusing?
Chairman Brandel, James, you know, a lot of it is like legalese, and she goes into the charter recognition with 7.03 A through D, A, B, and D. So I just don't want to speak to all of this because I don't want to say something that's incorrect, but I'd gladly give you a copy of this so you can read it and kind of compare and contrast. I was taking notes as you were talking as well. So yeah, I don't want to misrepresent what she's written here.
No, sorry.
Ms. Casey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. James, the charter, I know it does say a department, but it also says that except as otherwise provided by this charter or until changed by ordinance, the organization of the existing volunteer fire departments within the city county shall be governed by the applicable sections of state law. And currently the state law treats them as their own political subdivision with a board of trustees. And so when Butte-Silver Bow took over paying for like work comp and that, do you know if there was an interlocal agreement at that time when they did that?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ms. Casey. Thank you. No, that's actually, if I want to take a couple steps back. So that clause that you read, so it says that unless stated in this charter, and so how I read that, again, not a lawyer, but how I read that, there shall be a fire department, so the charter says it, or in ordinance, and it says in ordinance that there's a creation of a department with our volunteers. So this employee-employer relationship is looking from at least a safety management. We are looking like we have a lot of oversight from this. And then it says, and should be governed by applicable state laws, right? So state laws like the Montana Safety Culture Act. So that is a state law that we have to make sure that we are following as well. And yes, and then in MCA, it also says, unless specifically mentioned in our charter, which our charter does, it mentions there shall be a fire department. So that's just where I keep coming back to that. And you're right, it is incredibly confusing because there was a transfer of assets, and I really think a great conversation will be with the budget office and even Danette Gleason and Karen Hassler. I think having them on board to really kind of see this close relationship of actually owning the assets, of owning the property, of not paying the property taxes, right? There's a clear relationship there, and that's what I was trying to demonstrate.
So my question was there an interlocal agreement that you're aware of?
Yeah, and I was, sorry, I will be more clear about that. Thank you, Ms. Casey. If we ask, you would have to ask Danette or Ms. Hassler coming back to that because they were here or they would be around for that, but not one that I can see or that I've seen.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Silk?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, James, for your presentation. I guess my question is I have a bunch of questions, I guess, but one that is like a 30,000 square foot or 30,000 foot view on oversight in general. If Butte-Silver Bow is paying workers' comp for volunteers, and I 100% support that, I believe they might even pay life insurance, and I support that as well. I guess if we don't have a training standard or a safety program, if we're supplying PPE, if we're supplying apparatus, how much liability does Butte-Silver Bow have through Butte-Silver Bow itself, and then getting into, Chief Osborne and the elected officials? How much liability is Butte-Silver Bow accepting? And I don't know if state fund can help answer that, but that's like, who's in charge, right? Who's going to get in trouble when someone gets hurt? All the time when I go to work, I get emails across the country that there's chiefs being sued, there's communities being sued because someone got hurt. Are we going to put Butte-Silver Bow in that arena, I guess, as well? And I don't know if you can answer that or if anyone can, but that's one of the questions that I have. Who's liable?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Silk. From what I have been able to look at, it would be Butte-Silver Bow because we are a no-fault state. They're on our coverage. As for, you mean individual department directors get sued? I'm not sure of that. I don't know what our I maybe not that. I was going to. Sorry, go ahead. Do you have a clarifying?
Yeah, and I know that they will be held civilly, but is Butte-Silver Bow liable for paying workers' comp if we don't have oversight? Like, how much risk is the community accepting, I guess?
Yeah. So I think that all of Butte-Silver Bow, we're all under one policy. I don't want to speak too much about that. I don't know if anyone else can offer anything to that, but it's kind of one policy and everyone's covered, and that's why we have safety consultants so that they can help with all of our programs. But I believe everyone's covered under that policy, and that that they will pay the claim depending on the claim. Sorry.
Okay. No, I get it. Madam Chair, I have some more questions, but I'd like to let the other commissioners continue on.
Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, thank you. James, have you, when you were in Bozeman and you were working in your position in Gallatin County, and they have rural fire departments, right? So you had no training authority over those rural fire departments at all. So you didn't fit test them. You didn't train them.
No, sorry, Miss Randall. Mr. Dennehy, no, so they were their own separate taxing units, or they formed however they could have, if it was a volunteer fire department, fire service area, depending on how it was. What we were really responsible, like most counties, they help with the setting of the mill levy, or they help with the ballots, kind of like the administrative roles, kind of like the same thing we have with our fire department over at the airport. I would never go down to the fire department at the airport and start telling them what to do. Though we do set their mill. We do have a board there that governs them, but there's a clear separation that it has been blurred here. So that's the big difference. So absolutely, thank you, Mr. Dennehy.
Mr. Steppen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. James, thank you. I'm trying to summarize your presentation, and there has been a lot of conversation, disagreement over language in charters, in state law, and where we should be placing the priority. But am I correct in the general understanding that in your role as the safety and health coordinator, the state's tasking you to provide oversight to the volunteer departments, and then at the local level, you're running into roadblocks to being able to do it?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Steppen. Okay, Steppen. All right, thank you, sir. Great question. So I work on, I recommend things to our departments. So I have no authority. I'm a position of no authority. I work very closely with our departments. I try to build a strong relationship, a strong safety culture. All of our directors here really care about the safety and health, so there's never debate or disagreement. Sometimes there's financial conversations that we have to talk about, of like if we want to do when we want to buy a new trench box, or we have something like that come up. But that still doesn't eliminate that there will be a trench box. So there's definitely financial conversations that have to have. But the entire safety program that we have here is pretty strong because of our department directors. I work with them on a recommendation. I show them the OSHA standards. I invite the Department of Labor in. I have a safety committee meeting. And we all come together and we kind of make sure that our safety culture is great. Now the employer, which is Butte-Silver, does have a responsibility. Like it says, an employer must furnish a safe and healthy work environment for its employees. So that is what Butte-Silver does. I am just one piece of the huge mitigation to mitigate those claims. But yes, a safety program for our volunteers that our Director of Fire Services have, which I think that our charter and our ordinance says that we can do that. We can have a strong safety program. I think that would be great if they're a department within Butte-Silver. And I know there's a lot of words of like, is this a department or is that not a department? And I'm very, along with Ms. Dolan, I'm very curious to what our county attorney has to say about defining that department, like you were saying, because I define that department like we do in the rest of the charter. And like in every other occurrence in our ordinance and in our charter, we use the word department. But now for this special circumstance, the word department doesn't make sense. So yeah, I really think that if they are going to be called a department for us, we're going to have to follow, we're going to be held responsible. Unless we can indemnify them.
A quick follow-up to that. So when the compliance half of state safety that you were discussing earlier asks you to take them into an area to do an inspection, and you tell them that you don't have access to that area, what's the response?
Thank you so much. So we had to put a pause on their inspections just because usually how that works is I get noticed about 48 hours from our compliance inspector. I call the department director, let him know that they're going to be there. I'm going to show up for that visit. We're going to do a walk around together, and then 10 days from that visit, they're going to give us a report. Until we kind of sat down, I know that there's some change and crossover right now, and until we can kind of figure out what our plan is and who has that oversight, Because if we talk about this, does it go back to the trustees? Is the trustees or that chief? But is that chief an agent within Butte-Silver Bow? So then they're going to give us recommendations. So let's talk about walking surfaces, right? OSHA walking surfaces. They might say, you know, your floor or these cabinets are falling down. You need to replace this. You need to replace 3 of the respirators SCBA. Can that chief have the authority to replace those? He can't. He doesn't have that jurisdiction. Who does? Chief Osborne. Chief Osborne controls the budget. So now, if he can't have the authority to direct and control, that goes down back to Mr. Osborne. So when they come in for that compliance visit, we want to make sure on who's going to be paying for the abatement of all this. And if the chief can't pay for it directly, or the board of trustees can't pay for it directly, who can? And then is that enough of a decision for them to be able to show oversight for that? And that's where it goes back to employee-employer relationship. So keep those 2 words in mind. And as Montana state law defines a volunteer as an employee, right? So a volunteer fireman is an employee of that agency.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So going off of what Matt's question was, because the Montana State Compliance Inspector came in January of '25, and then it was put on hold because of these questions, are they willing to leave it on hold until the study commission is over in 2026? Or what did they tell you with regard to this hold or pause on compliance?
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Brandel, and thank you, Ms. Dolan. Another great question. I try to keep communication as open as I can with them. They're willing to help. I think what we should be doing is we should be showing that we're making movement. Obviously, I cannot speak on behalf of the Department of Labor, but one thing that Montana has a fantastic Department of Labor, especially their consultation program. I can't say enough amazing things about them. Many of them are tech grads. But they have such a good program. They want us to see that we're making effort. We're making progress. We're trying to have these hard conversations. We're debating these confusing languages. But during the meantime, that clock is ticking. That clock is ticking. And we talk a lot about our volunteer safety, but our paid fire department is also at risk with this whole situation that's going on.
To follow up, so have they given you a deadline, or are they willing to realize that no decisions are going to be made until the voters of Butte-Silver Bow get our product, and with their help to make those decisions that in turn help you, and again with our county attorney, with what is happening? Is he involved in that compliance process?
Oh, yeah.
And any deadlines that we have to worry about?
Thank you, Ms. Dolan, and I apologize for speaking when I shouldn't. No, thank you, Ms. Dolan. Another great question. Yeah, so we kind of sat down, we had a meeting with them. Right now, my goal is just being as transparent as possible. Obviously, if there is an injury, fatality, catastrophe, right? If there's something really bad, we can definitely, I can't speak on their behalf, and we hope that there's not, and we hope that we start making, even while this process is going, we still keep having this conversation with safety down the way. So I think both are true, but no, we don't have a, this is due, I know, I'll answer your question now. We do not have a direct date. But it is it's complex. I don't want to say just because we don't have a direct date, we put our hands in our pockets.
Mr. Soap, did you want to continue with your questions?
Yeah, I will throw another one in there. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm curious about the employee-employer relationship. When words matter, that even though they're volunteers, you know, if they are employees, I guess I would ask State Fund, does State Fund recognize volunteers as employees?
Madam Chair, my name is Rhodey Holman. I work with Marsh McLennan Agency. I work with the City and County of Butte-Silver Bow on its workers' compensation program, and I placed the business, the City and County's workers' compensation policy with the Montana State Fund. So, Chairman Brandel, to your question, Commissioner Silk, we have the workers' compensation policy written with the Montana State Fund, and it does possess a volunteer endorsement. So volunteers are covered under that policy.
Okay, great, great.
And I do have Sarah Roop, Sarah Roop is here. She is the underwriter with the Montana State Fund, as well as Tanya Geary, who is the safety management consultant. And we would be happy to answer any questions as it relates to the Montana State Fund policy specifically, and what it covers, what it does not cover, etc. I know you had mentioned earlier about some liability questions for personal officials. That is totally outside of the realm of workers' compensation.
Okay. Thank you.
Workers' compensation is to cover the injured employees and/or volunteers, and under the exclusive remedy doctrine, which governs workers' compensation, the injured employee's sole recourse is to the workers' compensation policy and not to the employer. So beyond those type of questions, I want to tailor our discussion specifically in the workers' compensation realm. I have to compliment Mr. Ouellette's presentation as well. He's very passionate about this stuff. I can tell you that from our perspective, we want all departments to be safe. All departments, right? It's no secret that workers' compensation coverage is a function, the premiums that insureds pay on workers' compensation coverage is a function of how safe they are. So from a historical perspective, if a particular insured has a poor safety record or has a litany of accidents, at some point in time in the future, they're going to pay the piper and those premiums will go up. So I'd like to, again, keep our involvement in this issue strictly to the work comp policy and to the work comp realm, but I can tell you that we want all departments to be safe, practice safe, have an important safety culture, and make sure that they're doing everything that they can from a safety perspective to prevent accidents. We want all the people to go home safely at night. So,
Great, thank you. I guess, could I have a follow-up? Thanks for bringing that up as far as having, make sure that everyone's covered. And I'm not sure there's some sort of calculation, although the employee, a volunteer, is not an employee, they're still going to make sure that they get their benefits if they do get hurt. If Butte-Silver Bow has a safety program that is more defined and better defined, is that better overall for the community's premiums? Is it better overall for just reducing the liability that Butte-Silver Bow would have within a department that is kind of broken, kind of fixed, depending on how you look at it? Is there something that we could recommend besides just charter changes to local government to help in the fire service?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Silk, again, we want all departments to be safe. We want them to practice and adhere to safety policies and procedures so that we can try and avoid accidents. They're one of an underwriting characteristic, and again, the Montana State Fund underwriter is here. They do look at the numbers, right? They look at the accidents, they look at lost time accidents, they look at claims paid, and they also look at all of the good things and bad things that a particular insured may or may not be doing when they price a risk. So I want to stand up here and say that I'm strongly advocating every department within the city and county of Butte-Silver Bow to adhere to strong safety standards, adhere to the Montana Safety Culture Act, adhere to the culture of safety that we're all trying to drive home, so that we can try and avoid those claims in the future, thus helping the taxpayers with their workers' compensation premiums.
Great, thank you for that. I'll go ahead and yield quick. I guess my next question would be for the underwriter of, is what Butte-Silver Bow is doing, is that consistent among the state with firefighter protection and underwriting and just carrying insurance? Are we doing basically what everyone else is doing? And I probably know the answer to that, but what are some of the consistencies that we could be doing that we aren't doing now that other communities amongst the state, say in rural fire departments, career fire departments, or anything like that? Is there some consistencies that we should be doing?
Thank you. So you guys are very unique in in the addition of those rural fire departments within your policy.
Okay.
So these other cities and counties, they only have these paid fire departments, whereas you guys have both. And so, again, just those policies and procedures being in place and following those and having that chain of command that Mr. Ellett had spoken about, those are huge for just the compliance portion of everything.
Okay, great.
Can you also state your name for the record, please?
Yes, I apologize. My name is Sarah Roop. I am an underwriter at Montana State Fund. ROOPE.
Ms. Casey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sarah, in the other communities or counties, are the rural fire departments, do they carry their own workers' comp through the Montana State Fund or another carrier?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Casey. They do carry their own policies. Volunteer fire departments are not required to carry workers' compensation, but they are encouraged to. So they are run slightly differently, just classification-wise versus the paid fire departments.
Madam Chair, I have a follow-up, and I don't know, it might be for James, but do you know if Butte-Silver Bow pays for the Melrose volunteer firemen, workers' comp?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ms. Casey. I don't have that information. So if we look at our packet on the final page, it talks about the endorsement. So as it calls, and this is an interesting question that I have considered too as well. So we have our volunteer firefighter policy on the second to last page that shows that we have elected for it, but also as an official department of Butte-Silver Bow, I'm not if that includes all volunteers, because then we also have another policy that includes basically anyone who wants to volunteer with Butte-Silver Bow. We also have a volunteer endorsement. So yes, as it's currently shown in that map that I demonstrated, the charter does not distinguish between our urban fire district. However, that employee-employer relationship that I talked about, the financing, because they are a separate taxing unit, and there are the 9 in our area are inside of our taxing unit, and I think that that's an interesting question for the study commission to talk about, is that, you know, rural fire districts, when you look at MCA and you look at rural fire districts, how they are established, what does it say there? Does it say first-class cities? No, it says a rural fire department can be established in a second-class city, right? Rural fire departments, even by the name itself, are designed to operate in rural areas. So rural areas like Wise River and Melrose, right, that makes sense. So we're kind of talking about a unique thing to Butte of having 9 urban volunteer fire departments. And unfortunately, that doesn't exist anywhere else in Montana in the form of consolidation with a charter than it does in Butte. So it's a very unique Butte question.
Mr. Dennehy, did you still have a question? I skipped over you. I apologize. Okay. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 2 quick questions. Just with regard to this elected coverage endorsement, James, it says effective date of endorsement 7/1/2025. I'm guessing that's just a renewal. How long has it been going on? How long is this elected coverage endorsement? When do you happen to know when it was created?
Yes, ma'am. The Butte-Silver Bow policy joined us 7/1 of 2024, and that is just for the renewal document purposes that elected coverage did come over into your renewal year.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question for Rhodey. Thank you so much for being here, all of you, appreciate it. To Chad's question, and it was a good one, the differentiation between employer-employee and then volunteer endorsement. What is the difference between, in the mind of insurance, with regard to the definition of employee versus the definition of volunteer endorsement? So they're obviously two very different things. Can you tell us what that difference is, if there is one?
Chairman Brandel, or Madam Chair Brandel, Commissioner Dolan. So from a work comp perspective, as long as the employee and the or the volunteer are acting within the course and scope of their responsibilities, then they would be covered.
So technically, there's no difference with regard to in your lane of workers' comp?
And Madam Chair, Commissioner Dolan, there would be a difference in how the claim could be adjusted, but the volunteers will get the benefits of the policy as the employee would get the benefits of the policy. It's just a function of how the claim is adjusted. Yep.
Ms. McCormick.
I would just like to make a comment to Mr. Ahmet. Excuse me, and I do appreciate your presentation. And I think when the chair was referring to the historian, she was referring to me. But I am a historian, but I also like to be up to date on current law. So just you need to keep in mind, we passed the charter in 1977, and that language that's in the charter about the fire chief and how things are to be organized, that's the charter. In 1979, a state law was passed that gave, that said, consolidation of city-county governments in Montana can have no impact on the rights and duties of volunteer departments or rural districts. That's the state law that was passed in 1979, and that is the law that is still in effect today. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but that's the law that's still in effect today. So when House Bill 547 came along, that essentially was trying to repeal that previous 1979 law, where if that happened, then our charter, as it is written, could be effective. But that's not what happens. So we have to comply with the state laws. When we have our charter, if the state doesn't address something specifically in a law, we may oversee the boundaries. But if there is a state law that explicitly spells out something, we have to comply with that until that law is repealed. So right now, our charter it's not good. So that's just what I have to say.
Thank you.
So when you explain that the charter says this, the charter says that, that's true, and that's great, but that's not how that's not what law we are operating under today. And that's where this confusion and heartache and everything has come about. Getting us to a place where we have a good, healthy, safe law that addresses, what I guess I just have to say is we can't leave some of the voice and concerns of the volunteer departments in alleviating this problem. We can't leave them out of it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Brandel, and a comment to that. Yeah, thank you, Ms. McCormick, and obviously I appreciate all the work, all your extensive knowledge, especially in such a historic district. So a few things, right? They voted to consolidate, so then, you know, we would definitely have to lean on our county attorney to talk about things, because clearly the districts, you know, the ordinance acknowledges the districts, but did they dissolve? And I would love to know, what's the role of the trustees? If there's no financial, what are they entrusted of? If there's no authority, because our ordinance says it. And then also, like, how specific are we talking about, right? Because that says specified in the charter. So it says, I can read it if you would like me to read it.
I think that's okay in terms
Okay.
of.
Okay, well, it's just, I know it's okay, but when we say things that have, like, I don't want to, nothing that I say, I don't want to be misconstrued, so it's important that we get the language right. So when you look at rural fire departments within Part 21, under Fire Protection Services 33, we clearly see that it says they must be financed, they must be managed. They're not being financed, they're not being managed, but then yet they must be operated, so then we're going to pick and choose that part, but then we're going to go back to the end of that, which says unless specified in the charter, and I believe that it does specify in the charter pretty clearly that there shall be a fire department composed of the volunteer and of the paid. So you're right, and what Ms. McCormick just demonstrated and what you said was exactly the problem that we have. There is so much confusion, and in safety and health management, I can't tell you how dangerous this situation has gotten for our volunteer firemen. I'm with you. My dad was a volunteer fireman. I cannot tell you how I admired him growing up. He would go work all day at his job. He would come home. He would sit down for dinner, and he would get caught on a call right away. He would go out there. He would do that call for 3 or 4 hours, come home, would be asleep. The next morning, he would be gone, and then there might be another fire call a couple days down the road. So I respect our volunteers. I think that it's such a testimony to this community that we have 130 volunteer firemen. We should be so proud of that, right? What I'm saying is that we have to make sure that we are setting up a system for them to be safe. And when I hear things that our volunteer firemen don't have this PPE or they're not being fit tested, and I'm sorry that I am passionate about them. My job's not to be liked. My job is to make sure that they go home right at the end of the day. So I want us to make sure that we're clear, we're very clear about what we're doing here. So all of this confusion, unfortunately, who pays for this? Our volunteer firemen and our paid firemen. And our safety and health of our paid firemen are equally as important, right? They should go to a scene, and our paid firemen should know exactly what training that volunteer went under, what type of PPE they have, what type of equipment. If a volunteer enters a building and they might not have the training, not saying that they don't, but they could not possibly, they might not have the training. We don't know that. Now we have escalated the situation. We have a more dangerous situation. Plus, our firemen, we just don't do interior firefighting, right? The fire department, they do hazmat, they do calls. They're part of St. James's nuclear radiation plan. I mean, they have such a huge job, our career fire department, that we have to make sure that we are financially supporting them.
Mr.
They are
Lett?
involved. Last point though, they are involved in so many emergency response. Ms. Dennehy would know in LAPC, you should see how many fire departments or how many agencies around here, their first call in an emergency is to our paid department. The hospital, St. James, Zach and our paid department do have a whole bunch of responsibilities. So when it comes to volunteer firefighting, yes, we want them to be safe, but we really have to have our safe guys just along those same lines. And we can't have all this confusion. So thank you, Ms. McCormick, for that.
Yeah, thank you. I think, the commission, we appreciate you spending time with us tonight to give us the background in terms of safety and health, and especially from your official and professional role within Butte-Silver County government. And, I'd encourage you to continue to be in touch with us and, of course, participate in our open houses as well, because as a citizen, you also have a lot of opinions and ideas. And so we want to hear from you in that realm as well, especially as an informed person. But tonight, I don't think we want to litigate 50 years of issues. I appreciate you, though. I want you to hear that. And I think that the commission has done a very good job, and I want to applaud my fellow commissioners of diving deep into understanding and trying to come up with the best options. And we've phrased it, just for your information, in terms of there's the we do nothing option. There's the nuclear option of we could dissolve everything and start all over, and then perhaps, and most likely, there is an option in the middle, and that's that direction of, can we create a system in which we have a direct line of authority in which both parties, career and volunteer, can agree to use that direction of authority? Or is that impossible? That's kind of where we're milling. And so your conversation kind of fits into that too, in terms of, especially as you bring up, we mill for Melrose and Wise River districts. They do have their own budget authority. What would it mean if we were to mill and take out all of these other districts, and give them their own budgets back? So there's a lot of considerations this body is making. Commissioners, before we let Mr. Ouellette go, are there any follow-up questions or things we'd like to say? Or Ms. Dolan, you have your light on.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to say, it's just Melrose, not Wise River.
Thank you. I thought I checked with my treasurer that it was both, so.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I was just quoting the map that DNRC has. They have Wise River on it, and I don't know what that, I'm not getting into that. And thank you. Can I conclude? All right, well, thank you guys. And sometimes my passion, I obviously am not here to litigate, not a lawyer, but I hope I was able to impart on you, on this body, what it's like to operate within the executive branch. I love my job. I love this community so much. This is an amazing place to live. It's an amazing place to work. This issue, when copper comes out, or when it comes out of the ore, it's rough, and then it goes through a smelting process and a refinement process. Yeah, it's hot. Yes, it's tough, but we can get through it. I know this community has gone through so much, so I appreciate you guys listening. And I just don't want anyone to be confused. I've never tried to be disrespectful. Yes, I'm very passionate and animated, but I do respect every single one of you and what you guys bring to this commission. I just wanted to make sure that language is correct from how we see it. And you could disagree with everything that I said tonight, but it gives you a little bit of insight on my job. And I hope that is able to make your decision a little more, if any, informed. So I appreciate all you guys and what you do for our community.
Thank you. Mr. Dennehy.
Madam Chair, it's about what we're going to learn from our public. And we made a very good questionnaire from Shanna's work. And we're going to glean a lot of that. But I think your conversation, or at least your analysis of there's things that we're going to do, right? There's going to be the nuclear, that we'll separate the paid from the volunteers, and volunteers will have to stand alone. They're going to have to be funded alone. They're going to have their own budgets alone if that's what they want, or if that's what the voters want. Or the voters can decide, I like the way we're doing it now. I like the chain of command and the chain of control, having one director of fire services. I think that's could be a recommendation that we'll get back from listening to our listening sessions. Or it can be a combination of trying to find a deliberative compromise between the nuclear and stay the same. And so once we listen to the public, and once we get an idea of what their feelings are, we'll be in a better position to make decisions on our deliberations of the study commission. I appreciate James' passion. And I appreciate everyone's voice here on the study commission. But again, as I said last week, at some point we're going to have to fish and cut bait and make a recommendation. So just to have that in the back of our minds when we are deliberating and when we listen to the public, what that's going to be. So again, thank you very much, James, and the crew to come up and give us some information about that. But we're going to glean a little bit more and a lot more from our listening session. So thank you. That's just a commercial, I guess, Madam Chair.
Much appreciated. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also add to that, Dan, thank you so much, with the fact that, once we get out into the public, we might have another option. There might be something totally new that we have not heard at all. And I'm hoping and praying and begging the community to really reach out into these sessions and the survey and everything we're going to be doing in the next several months. Because, yeah, it might be something we haven't even thought of. And so nothing's off the table, and I'm really looking forward to this public input.
Commissioners, what is the will of the group? Would you like a few minutes, or would you like to push on? You need 5? Okay. If we can recess for 5 minutes and be back in our chairs by 7, please. Okay, folks, I'll call us back to order since we're all in our chairs and ready to go. Thank you for the quick break. If we could move on to item number 8, correspondence and/or study commission update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No new correspondence received this week. As far as my report goes, Shanna and I met last week to coordinate how we want to do the open house, and I'm sure she will report on that soon. Supplies have been ordered. Well, supplies have been picked up, actually. So tonight we just have to decide what kind of refreshments and things like that, what kind of mood and everything we're going to do for that. As you heard me announce at the beginning, we now have hearing assist with disposable ear things, unless you have a hearing aid, that one you wear around your neck, and that is to be returned. But super easy to use. So that is here. And then I was looking over our webpage. I am inclined to remove, we have the department head interview schedule. I'm inclined to remove that and maybe replace that with the flyer for the open houses, if that sounds good to everybody. Or if you want to keep that other up there, I can just move it farther down. But that is what I'm inclined to do, and I think that's all I've got.
Any other discussion? Okay, so moving on, public outreach discussion. So Ms. Adams?
Good evening. I think this will be fairly brief, but we have 5 public open houses scheduled. Tuesday, August 12th in Melrose, Thursday, August 14th at Butte Brewing, Thursday, August 28th at the Emergency Operations Center, Thursday, September 11th at Montana Tech, and Tuesday, September 16th at the Ramsey School. So those have all been scheduled and confirmed. I think you've all seen the flyer. Those are starting to get hung around town, down in Melrose, a variety of places. The information will be pushed out on social media. There's a couple of those that may have gone out today or kind of pending. There will be an ad in the Montana Standard. I thought we might do 2 of those. We can do more if we want to, but at least it will go. We're looking at either Thursday or Saturday this week. Some emails have been sent to various people. KBOW will be doing some ads for us. And I can give you a list of all of the places where the information is being sent out. And then if you see something that's missing, let me know. It'll be good for all the commissioners, I think, to push this information out to your contacts and your networks. We can all do that. And then this week, we'll be finalizing the boards for the meetings, handouts, and other meeting materials. And then the survey will soft launch at the end of this week. You'll all get a link. You can take the survey, make sure everything's working, and then it'll be ready to go on Tuesday. So, any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Shauna, for all your work so far. So a couple questions. Are we doing social media ads maybe with Karen Corbin? I know she does that, but to get, if you're scrolling through social media like YouTube or whatever and these ads pop up, I think Mary mentioned that a while back of, if you're scrolling and all of a sudden these local ads pop up, I tend to actually look at the local ones because I want to know like what's happening at the archives or whatever. I think that might be a good avenue. And what was the other thing? Oh, and can you tell us what's going to be on the boards? Can you go through that?
Yeah, so those were emailed out to everyone last week. That's okay. And I don't have them in front of me. They got a little more prolific. I forget, we might be up to 8 at this point, but there's a lot of good information out there. And I can resend those out. They're just in Word format right now, and they're at the graphic designer to
zhuzh them up is her word, so. Thank you. I'll look at that. I apologize. I didn't see that in my email. I'm sure it's there. Thank you.
No, and please do review those. I specifically sent like a ask to Chad, so he kind of looked at the fire one. But please do look at those and give me any feedback back as soon as you can.
Ms. McCormick?
I'll check when I get home, but I don't remember seeing those either. So maybe, could you just resend them?
Yep, no
maybe?
problem.
Yeah.
I will resend those tonight. Yeah, that might be an old version. But I'll send the latest version out tonight, no problem.
Yeah, I think it was an August 1st email, if that helps you look.
That's fine.
There is sometimes, just FYI, Shannon, when it's coming from email outside of Butte-Silver Bow, sometimes a filter randomly will catch things. We learned that from County Attorney Ann Ruth, and so if we have to send them twice or something, it's just known that that's happening. Mr. Steppen.
Thank you. Quick question. You talked about the survey. Were you talking Tuesday, August 12th as the hard launch?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be ready for next Tuesday's meeting. And I do have at least one. I'm trying to get my hands on a couple more tablets that we'll have at the meeting with the survey up, so we can get people to fill out the survey at the meeting. But yeah, it'll be, soft launched later this week, and then ready to go next week out community-wide. So then we'll have to push that out in a variety of methods.
Gotcha. Oh, and I only asked because I had it highlighted for the upcoming op-ed, a launch date and an open through date. If we have that locked in, I can include that, or if not, I can change the language to be more general. So.
Good question, Mr. Steppen. That might be a question for the board. I'm happy to, we discussed that a little bit last meeting. Definitely hard launch next week. I think that's a good date to use. As far as when it closed, we talked about a few different things, because you've kind of got that, you probably want it to close with enough time to evaluate the data to put it into your draft report. So is that October? I don't know that we really had a hard date on closing that yet, but we could decide, or you could use more general language, kind of up to you.
Maybe it's best that I just generalize a little bit, let them know that it's coming next week, and rather than to tie us to anything too specific, in the interest of time.
Ms. Casey?
I guess, Madam Chair, I would hope that we would set a date, maybe even tonight, to close it, so that when we are at these open houses and the survey's out there, we can tell people you got to get your survey in by such and such. So I would push that we determine a date, whether we leave it out for 30 days, 90 days, whatever we determine. But I think we should set a close date so we can let people know.
Ms. Adams, how much assessment time do you need when it closes?
That's a good question. I think it'd be nice to have about a month before at least before your draft report is due, a couple of weeks to crunch the data, and a couple of weeks for you guys to get it incorporated into what you're working on.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just worried, and I don't want to be, I guess I'm so cynical at my age, but I'm hoping that we have a great turnout at all of our listening sessions. But what is your assessment if we are lacking in public input and folks are just not showing up because it's summer and people are on vacation and other things like that? Have you thought about a possibility of what we could do post these several avenues with public input and then the survey? I'd hate to close out the survey if we have really low participation in the listening sessions. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Ms. Dolan. And I share your concerns a little bit. I think it's a difficult topic kind of to get people, excited about, even though it's critically important and will impact them. One thing that I've had a lot of good luck with is direct mailers. So something we haven't done yet, we haven't talked about that yet, but you could do a direct mailer to the whole county. We have talked about, putting information into the water utility bills. That gets to a certain percentage of the county population, but obviously not everyone. But yeah, open to other ideas too, but direct mailers do seem to get people's attention.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Shauna. How much would a direct mailer, have you done that for the whole county before? And if so, do you have an estimated price on that?
I don't off the top of my head, but we could get that. Yeah.
Other thoughts, questions? Ms. Khan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with our last meeting being, open house being September 16th, would October 1st be a good date to cut off the end of the survey?
Yeah.
Or is that too soon?
I mean, I don't know if we're really ready to make that decision tonight. I mean, to Ms. Dolan's point, if we aren't getting a lot of feedback, we're going to have to shift gears a little bit and take some different tacks. So if that draft report, I believe, is due November, then yeah, October 1st would make sense, Ms. Cohn.
Possibly, we talked also about having some stopping and survey kind of people, maybe working with some students at Tech or something to, be willing to take on 8 hours of stop and would you fill this out for us at various events? Maybe that's the next thing to consider. I think Little League kicks off. It might be a great time to go to Father Sheehan Park and see if we can catch a parent or two before they, are dying of wind at Little League. And perhaps when we're, not only at the events, but maybe some other community events like Henri Roz is going to kick off here. Maybe we can have some people on the street stopping Butte-Silver Bow folks or have a booth or something that where people are, we can be as well.
Yep, I agree with all of those ideas. We've been, really focused on just prepping to make sure we're ready for these meetings, but we still have a whole other list of all of the civic engagement, civic groups, just kind of meeting people where they are, like you said. So that's, I think needs to be ongoing at the same time. Yep.
One of the things, thanks you, Madam Chair, one of the things that we discussed last week was having some fire department related issues on the survey. And I think it would be wise of us to put it on there, because we'll be able to hear from the public more so than just the presentations that we're getting. We say that we want to inform the public and we say we want to get as much input as possible. We all identify that the fire department is an issue within this community, and if we truly want their input to make the best recommendation for what is on the ballot, if anything, we were talking about putting something on there. I didn't want to just send the questions that I thought to you without running them through the board. Whether I'm biased or not, I really don't care at this point anymore. But I would like to discuss those, some of those questions on the survey if we're willing to do so. And if, Madam Chair, if I could read 3 questions that I have and we can go ahead and just discuss those. One of the questions I have is, do you want your primary fire service to be volunteer-based or career-based? Second question, are you willing to pay an additional tax for volunteer service in addition to full-time service? Number 3, do you agree or disagree that the volunteer and paid services working together in one fire district as it is now should be in the responsibility of Butte-Silver Bow? So with those 3 questions, let's go ahead and have the conversation with people, whether people like it or not. I think we just need to talk about it. Thank you.
Ms. McCormick.
Well, Shanna did provide questions in this new revised survey. fire services in Butte-Silver Bowl, volunteer and paid staff working together. What do you think of our current system? What improvements could be made? And what's the best way to fund and support our fire departments? I really liked those questions because I think they addressed our concern that we voiced last meeting about keeping the questions kind of open so that the public, you know, we got input from them instead of us directing their input. I think these are, you know, open enough that we can get some good feedback, and then we can fine tune them later. So, I mean, and that additional information that she provided to kind of explain the issue, I thought was balanced. So.
Yeah, the trick with survey is to have some direction, but not be leading, so that you're gaining information that is, I guess that is a wide net. So if you phrase your conversations of like, do you hate us or do you love us, then you'll get that dichotomy. You won't get a distribution of different opinions, or like if you were using a 1 through 5 scale or something like that, you would be on the 1s or the 5s. So the structure of the question is really important. Did everybody see those ones, or
Yeah,
Ms. Adams?
Madam Chair, if I may, so I have actually updated those. My laptop died. It's been a long, long day. So I don't have those to read to you, but I can send those out again tonight. So you can take a look at those. And they're pretty similar. I added a little bit more context. So I think they'll be broad enough to give some context and explain the situation, but then also not really lead people one way or the other. And I think there's, I forget, but a yes and no, and an open-ended, and a kind of rate how you feel about these things, rating system questions. So I'll send those out tonight.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chad, for those questions. But I have to agree with Mary with regard to, even with the updated changes, I think the less leading, the better with regard to these important questions, and just to allow the public to give us information without trying to pit one versus the other. Or especially the second question, Chad, when you're, would you like an additional tax for volunteers? I think everyone will go, absolutely, I don't like tax. So if we can keep them more general.
Well, let's make sure we know what we're asking about when they come up and say we want to share the volunteer's opinion.
So
we got to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And I'm
Yeah,
sorry for
absolutely.
interrupting you, but if
No.
we don't want to create division, there was a
Yeah.
recommendation last week about having a volunteer member and a career member going up and standing at the table. So
Yeah,
Well,
we
we're not gonna
rejected
do
that.
that.
Yeah,
though.
I
We
know,
said
but-
we're not doing that.
we
So
want it to
that's
be
why I
open.
want to keep it just.
And that's fine.
Open-ended.
I just wanted to have discussion about it, because when we get the facts, or to make sure those questions are truly what we want, to have this discussion, so we're not coming back with the data and be like, I could construe it this way or this way, just to make sure when it comes back, we'll be able to get the best data forward. Thank you.
And you have the revised questions for everybody you'll send tonight or
Yep.
tomorrow morning?
I will, yes.
And by all means, please give feedback to them to make sure that they're addressing the questions or what data you want to receive.
Madam
Casey?
Chair, I would just add that I think any of our decisions, Chad, even if we were to offer full-time commissioners, some of those are all going to have a tax option to them, really and truly. So I think for this session, if the more open-ended, the better. Because if you ask somebody if they want their taxes raised, the answer is no. It just is. But sometimes you got to find that balance of what is the cost-benefit analysis. And I think all of our decisions that we've heard are going to have a cost-benefit analysis, and perhaps an increase in taxes if the public does choose some of those. So I think, to be fair with the other questions too, that we kind of leave it open-ended.
And I think Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I think we shouldn't, or we shouldn't forget about that important idea, Laura. is that each one of these decisions have a price tag. And so to say these are our recommendations, but they're going to be free, is false advertising. There are going to be recommendations that we make that are going to cost taxpayers some money. And we should be very clear, upfront, transparent, whatever the buzzwords you want. But there's going to be some cost to these things. And I think people should have that understanding that this isn't a free ride. If we're going to change things, if we want full-time commissioners, if that's our recommendation, that's going to cost some money. And I think sometimes we get lost in the language and everything else. But at the end of the day, I don't know if we're going to have a fiscal note to each one of these, but I think we should be very clear that if we do decide some of these things and we provide you recommendations, there might be a cost to you for these changes. Thank you.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Dan. I totally agree. But at the same time, it would be incumbent upon us to be that transparent, absolutely. But also to state that there might be some offsets with regard to cost and cost-benefit analysis. If we add on something and we decide and we put in part of the recommendation like A and B, with recommendation number 1 has A and B, and A would be the cost of it or the additional cost of it, and then B could be, well, this is a possibility or a recommendation to offset that to have a balance or have a cost neutral essence. So we don't quite know yet, but to be transparent 100%, to let the folks know this is going to cost, or take away something to make that a neutral budget request.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that's our job, right? Is to make sure that we're laying the table for everyone so they can know the pros and cons, the costs, the benefits, all of that. So that's our future work and our awesome reports that we're going to get done. So, Mr. Steppen?
Yeah, thank you. Cindy, thank you for that. I have a question. Is that the role of this committee to find the money, right? Or is it our role to identify the holes and show the holes, and then it becomes the local government's responsibility to decide where the cuts come from, or if that makes sense?
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
we want to be careful about making a recommendation on, finding the solution. I really see our role as presenting the issue, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so I think
yeah.
we want to be careful. The other thing that I keep stewing on, I might be alone here, but when you talk about the 3 options with respect to fire, I'm curious what do nothing looks like, right? Because I think that at the very least, we need to make a recommendation, and I really think it starts with a formal legal opinion, because there's this loop of interpretation that seems to be causing the issue. And so I'm struggling with what do nothing looks like.
I think when we were deliberating, so should we go through all of this process and we decide we're not ready, equipped, et cetera, I don't know, like the charter changes require, we'd have to take out, 7 pages of charter. I'm just making a very bad example. So let's say we decide not to recommend any changes to the charter. That would be the do nothing option. I don't think this body is of that mind, just reading the tea leaves. But ultimately, we could make recommendations and bring it to ballot to the public to say we would like these changes in the charter in order to help our fire services district operate more effectively. And they say, no, we are going to do nothing. So, it's really in their hands. But I think did I capture that correctly? Okay. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to your question about costs and budgets and all that goes to the Council of Commissioners. You're absolutely right. That's not our role. But I would contend that we do have this role with regard to what the public wants and changing our charter. And if those changes have a price tag, I think it is incumbent upon us to put it on the list of recommendations, to just let the Council of Commissioners be aware that, okay, let's just say hypothetically, we go to a smaller commission, but they're full-time, to Dan's point, that is going to cost X amount of money, and obviously more than our part-time 12 commissioners make right now. But that said, to say, if we wanted to add, something to say, even just a statement that says, we ask the Council of Commissioners to help the taxpayer of Butte-Silver Bow with these changes, if there are possible offsets, and not to list them, but just say there could be something within the Council of Commissioners to look at the overall budget and to make those changes necessary to incorporate the increase and try and find a balance to make it a net zero for the taxpayer.
Ms. Casey?
Back to what Shauna, are we not ready to set an end date on the survey then, it sounds like? But I think we should set maybe a date for, a deadline for us to set that date so that we can keep rolling. And the other thing, just for a note, because I know you wanted most of the commissioners here, I will not be at the 14th or the 28th of August meetings, open houses.
Thank you. I think Ms. Khan's suggestion of October 1st being our tentative close time would be good to try to, feed as much activity to that survey. And then if we need to keep it open, we can. So I think for the op-ed, and this is my opinion, I would just leave the end date off of there, say in the next 45 days or something, and then none of us can figure out how far away that is. It's okay. But I would maybe suggest we leave that language general, opening date, have the QR code or the link, and then leave the close date off. Okay. All right. And then did you want to hear from us before we move on in terms of, because Ms. Casey opened the conversation about attendance at the open houses?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I also have one conflict. I can make every open house with the exception of the August 14th. Any other conflicts, Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I have two, unfortunately. I can attend the 12th, and then this one's in September. The 14th, I will be on vacation, and the 28th, I'll be out of town for work.
It looks like I'm pretty free for most. August 28th, I will not be. That's our home opener. And there's probably going to be a lot of people on campus.
Fair enough. Any other conflicts? Everybody else is good? Okay, thank you. Ms. Khan?
So thank you. Mr. Steppen, is that mean you're volunteering to do the survey with all those people on campus? I'm kidding. I was being facetious.
Gotcha. Put a big QR code up on some. But that might capture some Beaver County that night.
Ms. Adams, anything further?
Nope, I don't have anything else.
Thank you again. It feels good to have a little bit of momentum and some steam behind us, so very much appreciate your efforts. Looking forward. Oh, you wanted some advice on refreshments. I think we can do that outside of meeting. I don't feel that it's, getting consensus from the group here on what we should serve is probably not the best use of our time, but you can certainly pick our brains and our best ideas. Pizza is good. I like pizza. All right, our party line meetings, our party lines are going to be the last Wednesday of every month. I did schedule us into October, and then we decided November and December become the holidays, so we would come back and circle back. So we do need a volunteer or two for the end of August and the end of September. Mr. Steppen?
I'm happy to go in the end of September.
Excellent. Ms. McCormick?
I could do the end of September too.
Okay. Any takers for August 27th? Okay. Maybe those that aren't here tonight can do August 27th. That's usually how it works. If you're gone from the meeting, you get assigned the tasks. So we'll pass that on to Ms. Shaw and Mr. Thielen. But we can make that happen. I feel like the party line went really well this last week, and Mr. Davis has been excellent in terms of he's going to make all of those PSAs and all those ads for us. So he's doing that in good faith for the community as a service. So please thank him for that.
Other than you talking over me, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's okay. You'll get over it. All right, op-ed update. Is there anything further with the op-ed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I passed out a copy of the updated version, and all I really did with this version was add the listening session dates and locations, and I'll make the appropriate adjustment to the community survey language. And with your blessing, I'll get it sent and update the group on when we should expect to see it.
Any discussion or suggestions?
I'd ask just to triple check my dates and times to make sure that I'm not sending inaccurate information.
I was following along as Ms. Adams read them, and they looked correct. So I think those are good. Okay, moving on to new business. Is there, oh, excuse me, Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one unfinished business. Do we have an update with regard to having an Anaconda presentation? I mentioned it earlier with James, hoping that we'd get Anaconda folks here.
Thank you. Yes, we've been on the verge of scheduling so many times, several times, and things just like this meeting, like, oh, well, these people have been scheduled, or probation was scheduled, or this was scheduled, or that. So I have not had a meeting time that we can do that. So under new business, actually, I'd like to discuss our reservations for the room and calendar and everything. So maybe we can talk about it at that point.
Okay, so is there any other unfinished business? Just moving on to new business. You want to take it on?
Yes, yeah. I would just like to ask or propose that we set our meetings for September. It looks like Labor Day, of course, is September 1st, so that would be like the 8th and the 22nd, which kind of comes between those open houses, but we still do have some business to kind of conduct, I think, if you want. And I'm happy to reach out to Anaconda just as soon as we can figure out some potential days.
So, commissioners, what is the will of the group? We will have, we had talked about August 18th being a session that we come in here for, so we can kind of, after action, review the open houses, make adjustments as needed. And then, as Ms. Khan has stated, we would be, looks like September 11th would be the next. September 11th and 16th would be our next open houses. Personally, I would prefer to workload us less than more in terms of having multiple meetings on the week during the week. So if we could perhaps have the 22nd as a meeting, would that work for folks? Again, it would give us 2 open houses. We can review what we've heard, and then that probably we could also hear from Anaconda Deer Lodge if that works for them that night. Ms. Dolan?
I hate to be a nudge about this, but September 22nd, I'll be out of town for work, and I'd really like to be here for the Anaconda discussion. Sorry about that.
No, that's perfect. What about if we backed up to the 8th, which is ahead of the open houses? That's Labor Day. I'm not hearing any problems with the 8th, so let's pencil the 8th with Anaconda, and we can move around if
Sounds
needed.
good. And to use Cindy's expression, I don't want to be a nudge, but can we look at October just to get it on the calendar, on the like website calendar, and reserve the room? If
So we
need
would
to
be,
pay.
depending on our open houses and how they're going, we could transition to our every other week schedule in October, and because I think we would have enough information, ideally, right? And so this would be the time for deliberations and starting to think through. And we also have, oh my gosh, we also have our public meeting. We forgot that date. That's the 29th of September, correct?
Wait, what's the 29th?
Public hearing meeting.
That missed my calendar, okay.
Yeah. And that has to be overly publicized and, very active pushing people to that meeting. That was the anchor as well, so.
And will that be
Yes, correct, here.
Okay,
Madam Chair, that has to be advertised twice. Kim,
yes.
2 weeks apart and 6 days before is the last. So you got to make sure you hit the Montana standard on the right days with those.
I'll count back. That just now gives us time, just now.
Yeah.
I'll count back and work with Shanna on the language, what we need to get in there. So that would put, and that was the 29th. So that would put October 6th and October 20th, if we do every other week.
That's 2 weeks.
That would work, October 6th, October 20th. Mr. Steppen.
Can I just back up a second and make a suggestion to Kim that maybe wait a week before reaching out to Anaconda Deer Lodge local government with anything?
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on meeting dates or times? Guess time is always the same, but any other discussion there? Okay, thank goodness we don't have a public hearing tonight. Any other scheduled matters? All right, so our commission open houses are August 12th at Melrose, August 14th at Butte Brewing, August 28th at the Butte-Silver Bow Operations Center. All of 3 dates of these are at 5:30 to 7:30. The September 11th at noon to 1:30 is at Montana Tech Student Union Building. And then Tuesday, September 16th will be at Ramsey School, 5:30 to 7:30. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Dennehy moves.
Second.
Thielen second.
Loud into the microphone.
Step in seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.